What's up, guys? Today, of course, I'm going to be talking about, as the title suggests, whether or not tanks are overpowered in the Battlefield 1 beta, and they will be heading into the base game. That will be the source of discussion. I've been seeing a whole bunch of discussions on this on forums, YouTube comment sections, everything, and I personally don't believe that anyone can come to a definitive conclusion as of yet because of a whole variety of factors that I'm going to break down one by one very shortly. But I suppose it's too late. DICE has said they're going to plan on nerfing tanks, or at least the light tank anyway, so that's set in stone. But some claim, of course, this is human dynamics. Some claim they're brutally overpowered. Some claim they're absolutely fine. Some claim that there should be some sort of middle ground dialogue and discussion, or maybe some aspects that should be nerfed or changed. And I think I fall in that middle ground, and I'll dive into it. Let's dive into this and I'll discuss. The first few points you should know before we get into this. There's three different types of tanks. There's the light tank, of course, which I believe is actually going to be the main source of discussion, and it's pretty much been the main source of anger among the community with regard to tanks. Because the land ship as it is something you need very good teamwork and a lot of communication with your squad mates or your friends to really do well with. Because as itself, an individual driver, you're not going to be able to do a ton. And if you have people you're not in communication with, that thing will not last very long. So it's a good teamwork one. It's balanced well if you have a good team. The heavy tank, it's got a lot of firepower to it, and it can, well, tank a lot of shots. The issue, of course, with it, though, is some people believe it can take too much damage. I don't believe so. I believe it's meant to take a lot of damage, and I feel I can take one out relatively quickly, even with a light tank or with a squad. When I was playing with 2 or 3 of my friends and we played Assault, we were able to take out the heavy tanks pretty quick. Maybe they were bad drivers, I'm not sure. But I feel like it's a pretty good balance of being able to take shots and deal out a decent amount of firepower that's not too much. I don't think the heavy tank needs a big change. So the land ship and the heavy tank, I think, are decent, or at least don't change them as now. The light tank is the one I think if you're going to be making changes to, that's the one. But we'll get into this. I don't believe we should change everything before the game even hits launch, and here's why. Many claim that tanks are invincible and need a massive nerf, and I think there should be alterations. But the reason why I don't believe there should be immediate large changes right off the bat are because not everyone has everything unlocked for the Assault class yet because of the kit progression bug as part of the beta. So we aren't dealing with an exactly even playing ground. You'll have some people that have nothing unlocked for the kit despite playing for a long time because of that progression bug. And you have some servers where people just want to exclusively stick around and play anything but that class. So tanks basically get a free pass to annihilate everyone at all costs. AT rockets and other means of dealing with tank can't be unlocked by the people having this bug, so again, tanks go completely uncontested. In addition, because it's a beta, and there's a whole new flock of Call of Duty players supposedly that have wanted to play this game, and because the beta is basically a free testing week, you don't have to pay to buy the game, you get a good feel for whether you like it or not. It features a whole new set of players. They don't know what's going on. They don't know how to best use weapons for best success. They don't really understand the fact that you might need teamwork as opposed to individual success coming from Call of Duty. Or they're just or veterans, like in my case. A lot of the time I was screwing around when I was playing the beta. I was making sure to go out of my way to test all weapons, see which ones are good, see which ones are bad, test equipment. So I might have been playing around as a support or a scout, and the tank was going wild, and because it was a beta, I might not have cared. It was a place where I was testing things out. My stats don't matter. Nothing matters in a beta besides testing. That's the goal. So of course you're going to see skewed results. Of course you're going to see things go awry because it's a beta. So it's not an exact emulation of how the game would play out normally when there's a competitive balance and people actually care about their win-loss stats. And going back, I'm sure many of these people using, or new people playing the game, didn't really know what AT rockets were or how to use them. The beta was a free week of fun and they didn't really take it serious. So in addition to that too, I don't like the fact that the counters for the tanks have to be unlocked. I'd much rather the AT rockets are given to you on the release of the game, so that way you have that rock, paper, scissors dynamic right from the get-go of keeping tanks in balance and in check if you have a decent squad. I don't like the idea of I have to throw myself on some flags as an assault player, or I have to do certain things in Rush to be able to get a certain XP to avoid being murdered for the first several rounds by someone who happens to get the tank first in the spawn menu. I would much rather tanks have a counter right on the get-go at the game's launch. And again, with people having this unlocked and teaming up, the AT rockets, and knowing that grenades actually do damage the tank, I imagine tanks will have to play much further back and less aggressive to avoid being murdered quickly, which is how it's played out in other Battlefield games. That simply isn't the case yet because of the things I've said earlier. With it being a beta, it's a test ground with a whole bunch of new players. And before tanks receive a massive nerf, I'd like to see if this is actually the case. Is there a massive rock, paper, scissors dynamic at play that has great potential success as it is now? And we're ruining it because we're nerfing tanks on knee-jerk reactions in an experimenting testing ground. So that's what I'd like to see. Now, how would I go about balancing the light tank, because that's the one that has the big concerns, if there are concerns with it? First things first, I did see a Reddit post recently that I found quite interesting that suggested that third-person mode in the light tank is the biggest source of concern for why that light tanks have been murdering everyone at will, and I actually found it quite interesting. There's a lot of good logic behind it. He argues that third person gives far too much awareness without that person needing to really switch back to first person mode at all and making him vulnerable. Because, of course, when you're in first person mode, if you don't have a gunner with you, and in the light tank you won't, someone can sneak up on you and plant some C4 or dynamite in this case, or you'll get hit with a couple rockets, your track's disabled, and you're in trouble. So, is this a big issue? Is third person a big issue? Additionally, with the ability to heal without leaving the tank, it means the threat of getting the vehicle stolen or getting killed or sniped when you step out of the tank to heal it is gone. It means that you can play a much more passive or aggressive style, depending on what you prefer, without having the repercussion of I have to get out of the tank to repair. Because I know in Battlefield 3 and 4 many times, I know because I'd have to get out and repair, I wouldn't make that push in to go for those couple of extra kills if my health was at 50, because one more hit would mean I was in serious trouble. Because I know I can just take the hit, retreat, and repair without getting out, I don't have to worry about that anymore. So I think that plays a bit of a factor. So again, going back, should third-person visibility be reduced? Basically meaning like you're looking out the window and you can only, like in the heavy tank, you can only see certain amounts. Should the turret be allowed to move as quickly as it does? Should it emulate sort of, I hate using this term too, more realistic turning rates? Would the solution be to slow down the individual rate of repairs when you're repairing inside of the tank? That way you can't play more careless and confident, knowing that your damage can't be cleared up as fast. Perhaps having it so that the light tank can take more damage to disable a track, but if the track gets disabled, it either can't be repaired, or you have to leave the vehicle to repair it, leaving you open to snipers. I do feel if anything does need a bit of reduction, it's actually the canister shell on one of the packages for the light tank. It can kill at sniper rifle ranges, and I think it's a bit much. Maybe reduce it to a quarter, or reduce it a quarter of its range. So if it can hit at 100 meters away, reduce it to about 75, maybe 50 meter range, and I think that would repair the canister shell a bit. In my experiences playing against those light tanks, what actually irritated me most was when I'd hit them with two of the grenades or a rocket gun. They would be able to retreat, repair, come back out 10-15 seconds later, and they'd be perfect again. By then, I don't have enough ammo to do enough damage to disable them or take them out anymore. So I don't feel the solution in this case would be to add more rockets to assault players. We've seen enough explosions from one life in Battlefield 4. I feel the solution would be to slow down the rate of repair of those tanks. That way they're going to be less prone to diving in. Would the solution also be to buff the AT rocket launcher? To light tanks, this does about 15 to 20 damage per shot, maybe it should be 25, so that if you hit all 4 shots, it can blow it up. Maybe grenades are more inclined to disable certain parts of the tank, ensuring that you won't walk right into an area while tanking damage as a tank. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on my suggestions. My biggest wish, though, is if there are going to be any changes, that they aren't significant nerfs before we actually get to play the game in the base game. I would be pro the idea of reducing the visibility a little bit on the sight on the third person, and I would be pro the idea of also maybe slowing down the rate of repair if you're not going to exit the tank to repair. So those are my suggestions. Feel free to comment. Have a good one.